2 days later, something unexpected happened. At the airport, Helena was anxiously awaiting her flight to an important conference in Rio de Janeiro. Dressed in an elegant navy blue suit that contrasted perfectly with her clear eyes and serene expression, she stood out as a successful businesswoman. Years of hard work and dedication had earned her remarkable prestige in her field. However, that day held an encounter that would change her life forever. As she walked towards the boarding gate, Helena saw a familiar figure in the distance. His heart sped up, and his hands shook slightly. It was Joachim, her old boyfriend, the man she hadn't seen in over 10 years. The separation had been abrupt and painful, the result of an intense relationship full of ups and downs. At the time, Helena was focused on her career, while Joachim, an idealistic young man, wanted to live a simpler life, focused on his artistic passions. The meeting was completely unexpected, and Helena was paralyzed when she saw Joachim. He looked different, but the same flame that once enchanted her still shone in his eyes. Joachim also saw her, and, for a brief moment, their eyes met. Time seemed to stop, and memories of the past came flooding back like a whirlwind of emotions. They both hesitated, not knowing whether they should get closer or go their separate ways. Joachim, about to board a flight to Florianopolis, took the initiative. He approached Helena with a shy but sincere smile. "Helena, is that you?" he asked, his voice full of surprise and nostalgia. Helena, still a little dazed, responded with a nod, while trying to hide the confusion she felt. "Yes, it's me," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. They started talking, reminiscing about the good and bad times they had shared. Helena talked about her professional achievements, and Joachim talked about his simple life in the interior of Minas Gerais, where he had become a respected artist. The conversation, which began with some tension, soon turned into a friendly exchange full of longing. As time passed, the atmosphere between the two began to soften. Helena, who always believed that life had taken the right direction when she distanced herself from Joachim, began to question herself. She realized that despite all the success she had achieved, there was something in her life that was missing, and that something, or rather someone, was there, in front of her, reminding her of what could have been. Boarding was announced, and Helena knew she needed to make a decision. The reunion had awakened feelings she had long buried. But now, in front of Joachim, doubts about his choices began to emerge. She could go on with her life as if nothing had happened, or she could explore what she still felt for him. As she walked towards the gate, Helena felt the weight of a choice that once again could change everything. When Helena boarded the plane, she headed to first class, a luxury she allowed herself after years of hard work. He felt comfortable and confident, until suddenly he noticed that Joachim was on the same flight, but sitting in economy class. A discomfort came over her. It was as if the difference in status between the two was amplified by the environment they found themselves in. Joachim, always humble, seemed out of place when he passed through first class and found Helena comfortable in her luxurious armchair. Helena noticed that Joachim's look, when he saw her there, was a mixture of surprise and slight embarrassment. She knew that Joachim always valued simplicity and that luxury was never important to him. This difference between them, which had previously seemed insignificant, now became a visible barrier, something that made her feel uncomfortable. She tried to hide it, but the discomfort was evident. During the flight, Helena was served champagne and a sophisticated dinner, but none of it seemed to taste the same anymore. She began to question her choices and what really mattered in her life. The material comfort which he valued so much now seemed empty in the presence of Joachim. The previous conversation at the airport had awakened in her a feeling of nostalgia and regret, something that the luxurious environment could not erase. Helena's embarrassment grew as the flight progressed, She felt a growing need to get closer to Joaquim, to somehow reduce the distance that time and her choices had created between them. However, pride and fear prevented her from taking any action. She was caught between the desire to reconnect with her past and the life she had built for herself. When the plane landed, Helena felt relief mixed with apprehension. She knew that the meeting with Joaquim was not over, that there was still something to be resolved between them. But how could she face it? Was the awkwardness he felt during the flight just a reflection of the differences that had become insurmountable? Or was it a sign that there was still something important between them, something that could not be ignored? Helena got off the plane with a feeling of uncertainty, but also with a new perspective on her life. The unexpected encounter and the discomfort that followed made her realize that perhaps the success and luxury she sought so much were not enough to fill the emptiness she felt. As she walked through the airport, Helena knew she needed to make a decision about her future, a decision that would go beyond the comfort and security she had built. When Helena was reunited with Joaquim in the arrivals hall, she felt a mix of emotions that she couldn't control. On the one hand, there was the joy of seeing someone who once meant so much to her, but on the other, there was the discomfort of dealing with the wounds of the past. She tried to compose herself and act natural, but something inside her prevented her from being completely sincere. Joaquim, on the other hand, seemed genuinely happy to see her. He approached with a smile, but realized that Helena didn't respond with the same intensity. There was a certain contempt in her eyes, something he couldn't fully understand. Helena, who had previously been so open and caring, now seemed distant, almost cold. As they walked together towards the airport exit, Helena tried to maintain a polite conversation, but without showing much interest. She talked about trivialities, avoiding any mention of the past or the feelings that might arise. Joaquim, noticing the change in Helena, began to feel humiliated. He had hoped for a warm reunion, but instead he felt like he was being rejected in a subtle but painful way. Helena's contempt was not intentional, but the result of an internal conflict. She had convinced herself that her life was better without Joaquim, that the success she had achieved was the result of her choices. Now, seeing him again made her question those certainties, and that made her uncomfortable. Instead of dealing with these feelings, she projected them onto Joaquim, keeping him at a distance. Joaquim, in turn, felt increasingly humiliated. He realized that Helena no longer saw him as an equal, but as someone who was left behind. Her words, although polite, carried a tone of superiority that hurt him deeply. He, who had dedicated his life to art and simplicity, now felt inferior in the face of Helena's material success. Joaquim's humiliation culminated when they reached the taxi that would take them to the hotel. Helena, without even asking his opinion, chose the most expensive hotel in the city, while Joaquim, with his modest life, would never have chosen something so luxurious. He tried to suggest a simpler place, but Helena interrupted him, saying they deserved the best. Joaquim, feeling helpless, accepted in silence, but the humiliation was evident in his eyes. During the ride to the hotel, the silence between them was almost palpable. Helena, now aware of what she had done, began to regret her actions. She didn't want to humiliate Joaquim, but the contempt she felt was more about her own insecurities than about him. He knew he needed to apologize, but he didn't know how. Joaquim, on the other hand, was lost in his thoughts, trying to understand how someone he loved so much could treat him with so much contempt. After arriving at the hotel, Joaquim retired to his room, deeply shaken by his encounter with Helena. He sat by the window, looking at the urban landscape of Rio de Janeiro, and began to reflect on his life and his choices. Helena's words and actions had awakened in him a feeling of inadequacy, something he hadn't felt in a long time. But at the same time, there was a growing anger within him, a determination to prove to himself that his life, although simple, had value. Joachim spent hours thinking about everything that had happened between him and Helena. He remembered the dreams they had when they were young, the promises they made to each other, and how their lives took such different paths. But instead of wallowing in regrets, Joachim decided it was time to make a decision that would change his future. He could no longer live in Helena's shadow, nor allow her contempt to define him. That night, Joachim decided that he would leave a new legacy, something that would show the world the value of his life and his choices. He decided that he would dedicate himself entirely to his art, but in a way he had never done before. Joachim knew he had talent, but now he wanted more than that. He wanted to create something that inspired people, something that showed that the true richness of life was not in luxury, but in authenticity and passion. With this new determination, Joachim began planning a large exhibition of his works. He would show his art to the world in a way he had never done before, mixing his paintings with other forms of artistic expression, such as music and poetry. I wanted to create an experience that touched people on a deep level, that made them question their own lives and choices. Joachim knew that this decision would not be easy. He would have to leave his comfort zone, face criticism, and possibly failure. But he was willing to risk everything to create something meaningful. This was his way of showing Helena and himself that his life had value, that he was not inferior to anyone else. He wanted to leave a legacy that spoke for itself, something that would last far beyond his own existence. In the days that followed, Joachim began working tirelessly on his new exhibition. He connected with other artists, musicians, and poets, seeking to create collaborations that enriched his vision. With each new work he created, he felt that he was getting closer to his goal, that he was building something truly special. While Joachim worked on his new legacy, he began to emotionally distance himself from Helena. He realized he didn't need her approval to feel fulfilled. His happiness and worth were in his own hands, and he was determined to create something that reflected that. While Joachim dedicated himself to this new project, an unexpected turn of events was about to happen in his life. Louisa, a young art curator, discovered Joachim's work by chance while exploring independent galleries looking for new talent. Upon seeing his works, Louisa was instantly enchanted by the depth and sincerity of his art. She knew she had found something special, something that deserved to be seen by a wider audience. Louisa, determined to promote Joachim's work, got in touch with him and proposed organizing a large exhibition in one of the most prestigious galleries in Rio de Janeiro. Joachim, although surprised by Louisa's interest, saw this opportunity as a sign that he was on the right path. He accepted the proposal and began working even more intensely to prepare his works for the exhibition. However, what Joachim didn't expect was that Louisa was also bringing with her another surprise. Pedro, a renowned art critic and also an old friend of Joachim, found out about the exhibition through Louisa and decided to attend the opening. Pedro and Joachim had grown apart over the years due to their different views on life and art. Pedro always believed that Joachim was wasting his talent by living such a simple life away from the spotlight. When Pedro arrived at the exhibition, he was impressed by what he saw. Joachim's works were powerful and moving, reflecting a depth he had not realized before. Pedro, who had always been a harsh critic, felt touched by the authenticity of Joachim's paintings. He began to question his own opinions and wondered if he had underestimated the value of the life Joachim chose to live. The meeting between Louisa and Pedro was a turning point in Joachim's life. Not only was he gaining the recognition he deserved, but he was also coming to terms with his past. Pedro, upon seeing the greatness of Joachim's art, realized that there was much more to life than success and fame. He saw that Joachim had found something that he, Pedro, had lost along the way. a genuine passion for art. During the opening of the exhibition, Pedro made a point of looking for Joaquim and expressing his admiration for the works. The two spoke at length, reliving memories from the past and discussing their different trajectories. Peter humbly acknowledged that he had been arrogant in his previous opinions, and that Joachim had proven himself right by following his own path. Luisa, upon observing the reunion between Joaquim and Pedro, felt deep satisfaction. She knew she had done the right thing by promoting Joaquim's work. Furthermore, she also felt that she had helped heal old wounds between the two friends. The exhibition was a success, and Joaquim's works were praised by critics and the public, consolidating his place in the art world. The turnaround that Luisa and Pedro brought to Joaquim's life was more than just artistic recognition. It represented a reconciliation with the past and validation of his life choices. Joaquim, who had decided to create a new legacy, now saw his work and his life in a new light, knowing that his art had the power to touch people in ways he had never imagined. Helena was known in the real estate market as a determined, ambitious woman capable of turning any business into gold. From a young age, he stood out for his strategic vision and ability to anticipate market trends. With each new venture, Helena consolidated herself as one of the biggest references in the sector, always ahead of her competitors. His career was marked by great achievements, but also by an ambition that, at times, bordered on the insatiable. At 35 years old, Helena had achieved practically everything she wanted. He had a vast portfolio of properties, from luxurious apartments in large urban centers to vast rural properties. However, even with all these achievements, Helena still felt that something was missing. I wanted more than just to be rich. I wanted to leave a legacy, something that would be remembered by future generations. It was then that the opportunity I had been waiting for arose. The acquisition of an old historic farm, Fazenda Oliveira. Fazenda Oliveira was a century-old property, located in a privileged region. With more than 1,000 hectares, the farm had not only fertile land, but also an invaluable historical value. The property had belonged to one of the most traditional families in the region, but over time, the family lost its power and influence until the farm ended up being put up for sale. Helena saw this opportunity as the chance to carry out her biggest project yet. Helena's plan was ambitious. She wanted to transform Fazenda Oliveira into a high-end tourist complex, preserving the history and culture of the place, but also offering luxury and exclusivity to future guests. I knew that the project would require a significant investment, in addition to delicate negotiation with the farm's heirs. However, Helena was willing to face any challenge to make her dream come true. The first stage of the project involved the acquisition of the farm. Helena met with her heirs, who were 5 brothers, all in complicated financial situations. They were reluctant to sell the property as they had a strong emotional attachment to the place, but knew they could not afford to maintain it. Helena, using all her negotiation skills, managed to convince the brothers that her proposal was the best solution to preserve the family legacy. With the farm acquired, Helena began the second step of the project, the transformation of the property. She hired the best architects and designers with the mission of creating a complex that was, at the same time, modern and respectful of local traditions. The farm would be divided into themed areas, each representing an aspect of the region's history, with hotels, restaurants, convention centers, and event spaces. For months, Helena dedicated herself entirely to the project. Every detail was supervised by her, from choosing materials to hiring employees. The pressure was enormous, but Helena felt alive and motivated like never before. She knew that if the project was a success, her career would reach a new level, and her name would be associated with one of the most iconic ventures in the country. However, as the project progressed, Helena began to face unexpected challenges. The local community, which had initially supported the initiative, began to oppose the changes being made to the farm. Some residents complained that the project was changing the character of the place, transforming it into something far from its roots. Furthermore, family problems between the heirs began to emerge, threatening the continuity of the works. Helena, determined not to let anything get in the way of her plans, had to deal with these issues diplomatically and strategically. She organized meetings with the community, seeking an understanding, and mediated conflicts between the heirs. The situation was tense, but Helena was determined not to give up. He knew that the success of this project depended not only on his professional skills, but also on his ability to deal with adverse people and situations. When Helena thought she had everything under control at Fazenda Oliveira, a new and unexpected crisis began to take shape. The local community, which was already showing dissatisfaction with some changes, decided to speak out openly against the project. A group of residents, led by a former farm employee, organized a protest in front of the main entrance, demanding that work be stopped until their demands were heard. Helena, who had always considered herself a rational person and capable of dealing with conflicts diplomatically, decided to face the situation personally. He believed that, by talking directly to the protest leaders, he would be able to resolve the situation peacefully. However, what he found when he arrived at the farm was a much more complex and hostile scenario than he expected. The leader of the protest, a man named Paulo, was a former farm foreman and had a deep bond with the property. For him, transforming the farm into a tourist complex was an affront to the memory of his ancestors and the history of the region. Paulo was charismatic and articulate, and had managed to mobilize a large part of the community against the project. He saw in Helena not just an ambitious businesswoman, but someone who was destroying what he considered sacred. The confrontation between Helena and Paulo was intense. While Helena tried to explain the benefits of the project and how it could help revitalize the local economy, Paulo accused her of being insensitive to the region's traditions and culture. The discussion quickly became heated, and other residents began to join the protest, making the atmosphere even more tense. Helena realized that she was facing a situation that could not be resolved with just words and promises. Faced with the impasse, Helena was forced to make a difficult decision. It could try to negotiate with the protesters, giving in to some of their demands. Or it could resort to force, using the influence it had in the local government to disperse the protest. Both options had their risks. Giving in could be seen as a sign of weakness, while using force could generate negative repercussions and further damage the project's image. After reflecting on the situation, Helena opted for a third way, seeking dialogue with Paulo, but in a less hostile environment. She invited him to a private meeting, away from the prying eyes of protesters and the press. To his surprise, Paulo accepted the invitation, willing to hear what Helena had to say. At the meeting, Helena explained in detail her plan for the farm, highlighting the measures she was taking to preserve local history and culture. Paulo, although still suspicious, began to see that Helena was not just a greedy businesswoman, but someone who really had an interest in doing something positive for the region. The conversation, which started tense, gradually became more open and constructive. Paulo explained his concerns and suggested some changes to the project, which Helena, after considering, decided to implement. He realized that, by integrating the local community into the project, success would be more guaranteed. The confrontation at Fazenda Oliveira, which initially seemed like a threat to Helena's project, ended up turning into an opportunity to strengthen her relationship with the community. Paul, who was previously a staunch opponent, became an important ally. He used his influence to convince other residents that the project could, in fact, be beneficial for everyone. The protest was ended, and the works were able to continue, now with the support of the community. This experience taught Helena a valuable lesson about leadership and negotiation. She realized that no matter how ambitious she was, she needed to listen to people and consider their feelings and traditions. The confrontation at Fazenda Oliveira, although difficult, was a moment of personal and professional growth for Helena. He knew there were still many challenges ahead, but he was more confident than ever in his ability to face them. As work continued at Fazenda Oliveira, Helena began to become increasingly involved with the local community, discovering stories and secrets that had been buried for a long time. It was during one of these interactions that she came across a surprising revelation, something that would completely change her perception of the farm and the Oliveira family. While talking to one of the farm's former employees, Helena learned that there was a legend in the region about a lost treasure, hidden somewhere in the property's vast lands. The treasure, according to legend, belonged to one of the ancestors of the Oliveira family, who had hidden it during a period of conflict to protect the family's wealth. Helena, initially skeptical, began to investigate the story further, intrigued by the possibility that there was more to the farm than she had imagined. As Helena delved into the history of the Oliveira family, she began to discover old documents and letters that revealed dark secrets. He discovered that the family patriarch, who everyone in the region revered as an honorable and just man, actually had a controversial past. He had been involved in violent disputes with other local families, accumulating wealth in dubious ways. These revelations brought to the surface family tensions that had been buried for generations. As Helena deepened her investigations, the heirs of the Oliveira family began to divide. Some wanted Helena to stop the excavations and investigations, fearing that revealing these secrets would tarnish the family name and affect the value of the property. Others, however, saw an opportunity to finally reveal the truth and face the past, believing that this would bring some kind of redemption to the family. This family tension began to directly impact the progress of the project. Meetings that were previously focused on practical decisions about the venture now became heated discussions about what to do with Helena's discoveries. Each heir had a different opinion, and Helena found herself in the middle of a true emotional battlefield. She, who had always been a practical and objective woman, now needed to deal with issues that went beyond the business world. The breaking point came when Helena found, in one of the old letters, a direct reference to the lost treasure. The letter mentioned a specific location on the farm, something that could be the key to finding the hidden riches. Helena, driven by curiosity and the desire to solve the mystery, decided to organize an expedition to explore the indicated location. However, this decision was met with strong resistance from some heirs, who saw it as an invasion of the family's privacy. The situation worsened when one of the heirs, who until then had remained silent, threatened to take legal action to prevent Helena from continuing with her excavations. He claimed that Helena was acting irresponsibly, putting the family legacy and the feelings of local residents at risk. This legal threat further increased tension, leading the other heirs to take a definitive stance on the matter. Helena, who until then had managed to mediate the conflicts, began to feel overwhelmed. I knew I was dealing with something much bigger than a simple real estate project. What once seemed like a business opportunity now turned into an emotional battle, full of nuances and moral implications. Helena, however, was not willing to give up. He believed that the truth needed to be revealed, and that the past, however painful it was, must be faced. Family tension reached its peak when Helena called a meeting with all the heirs to discuss the next steps. The meeting was marked by heated discussions, accusations, and tears. In the end, it became clear that there was no consensus on what to do with the findings. Helena knew that any decision she made would have profound consequences, both for the project and for the Oliveira family relationships. While Helena was dealing with the tensions at Fazenda Oliveira, unexpected news arrived and shook her life even more. Joaquim, her former love and now ally in the project, had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Joaquim's diagnosis was a shock not only for him, but also for Helena, who had begun to get closer to him emotionally after years of distance. Joaquim has always been a vibrant person, full of energy and passion for life. He had overcome countless challenges over the years, always with a positive and determined attitude. However, the news of his illness caught him off guard, and he had difficulty accepting the seriousness of the situation. Helena, who was also shaken, tried to be strong to support him, but she knew that the impact of this diagnosis would be profound and lasting. The diagnosis brought with it a series of questions and reflections for Joaquim. He began to think about his life, his choices, and the legacy he would leave behind. The illness forced him to confront his mortality in a way he had never done before. Joaquim, who had always been an independent and self-sufficient man, now found himself dependent on others, which made him deeply uncomfortable. Helena, in turn, felt a mix of emotions. He worried about Joaquim's health and the impact it would have on his life, but he also began to reflect on his own feelings. Joaquim's diagnosis made her realize that, despite all the differences and conflicts they had over the years, she still cared deeply for him. Helena began to question her priorities and think about how she could be more present for Joaquim during this difficult time. The impact of the diagnosis was also felt on the Fazenda Oliveira project. Joaquim, who had become an important pillar for the success of the enterprise, now needed to take time off to take care of his health. This left Helena in a delicate position, as she needed to continue running the project while dealing with constant concerns about Joaquim. I knew that his support was crucial, but I also knew that I needed to respect the time and space he needed to recover. At the same time, the local community, which had begun to get used to Joaquim's presence and trust him, was also impacted by the news. Many residents expressed their concern and solidarity, offering help in different ways. Joaquim, who has always been reserved about his personal life, found himself surrounded by a support network that he never expected to receive. It made him realize that despite his reservations, he had built meaningful bonds with the people around him. As time went by, Helena and Joaquim began to spend more time together, not only because of the project, but also because of the illness. They began to reminisce about the past, talking about the moments they shared and the different paths they took. Joaquim's diagnosis, despite its severity, brought a new dimension to their relationship, one that was based on a deeper understanding and mutual appreciation that had been forgotten over the years. Helena, who had always been a practical and business-focused woman, began to realize that there was more to life than success and material achievements. He began to open up more to Joaquim, sharing his fears and insecurities, and, in return, Joaquim did the same. The impact of the diagnosis was profound for both, but it also served as a catalyst for a new phase in their lives. The news of Joaquim's illness, which initially seemed like a tragedy, ended up turning into an opportunity for Helena and Joaquim to reconnect and reevaluate what really mattered to them. The impact of the diagnosis was felt in every aspect of their lives, but it also brought new clarity and purpose, both to the Fazenda Oliveira project and to the future they began to envision together. After weeks of reflection and rapprochement with Joaquim, Helena realized that something fundamental had changed in her life. Joaquim's diagnosis, the tensions at Fazenda Oliveira, and the rediscovery of her relationship with him had opened Helena's eyes to issues that she had neglected for a long time. She realized that despite all her achievements, there was still something in her life that was incomplete. It was then that Helena decided to make a bold proposal to Joaquim, a new beginning, not only for the two of them, but also for the Fazenda Oliveira project. He proposed that, instead of continuing with the original plan of transforming the farm into a luxury tourist complex, they should create something that was truly meaningful and reflected the values they shared. Helena wanted the farm to become a place of healing, art, and community. a refuge for those seeking more than just material comfort. Helena's proposal was not made impulsively. She had thought carefully about what really mattered to her and Joachim, and believed that this new path was what they both needed. Joachim, who had become more introspective after his diagnosis, was surprised by the proposal, but also felt that there was something right about it. He has always valued authenticity and human connection, and the idea of transforming Fazenda Oliveira into a place where these qualities could flourish touched him deeply. Helena explained that she wanted to create a space where people could reconnect with nature, art, and themselves. It proposed the construction of art studios, meditation centers, and workshops for the local community, as well as spaces for exhibitions and cultural presentations. The idea was for Fazenda Oliveira to become a center of creative expression and well-being, where both artists and visitors could find inspiration and peace. Joachim, upon hearing Helena's proposal, felt that he had finally found something that really made sense to him. For years, he had struggled to find a purpose that would motivate him to keep creating, and now, faced with this new vision, he felt there was something truly special at stake. The farm, which was once just another venture, now had the potential to become a living legacy, something that he and Helena could leave for future generations. Helena's proposal also involved a complete restructuring of the project, which meant that they would need to start from scratch in many aspects. This included renegotiating contracts, changing architectural plans, and, most importantly, engaging the local community even more deeply. Helena knew it wouldn't be easy, but she believed that, with the help of Joachim and the community, they could transform Fazenda Oliveira into something truly unique. With Joachim's approval, Helena began working on the new plan. He organized meetings with the farm's heirs, explaining his new vision and how it could benefit everyone. Surprisingly, many of the heirs, who had previously been divided over the fate of the farm, were now more receptive to the idea. They realized that by creating a space that honored local history and culture, they were not only preserving their family's legacy, but also building something that could have a lasting positive impact. As Helena and Joachim dedicated themselves to this new beginning, something changed between them. The relationship, which was previously marked by uncertainty and resentment, began to transform into a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. Helena, who had always been an independent and self-sufficient woman, began to realize that there was strength in sharing her struggles and challenges with someone she trusted. Joachim, in turn, found in Helena a source of support and inspiration that he had not felt for a long time. Helena's proposal was not just about Fazenda Oliveira. It was about the life she and Joachim wanted to build together. They knew the road ahead would be full of challenges, but they also knew that together they could create something truly special. And so, with a new purpose in mind, Helena and Joachim began to write the next chapter of their lives, determined to make this new beginning a legacy that reflected everything they were and everything they hoped to become. Helena and Joachim's engagement represented the union of two families with different histories, but now intertwined by love and mutual respect. This union brought with it the promise of a shared future, where both would be committed to building something lasting and meaningful, honoring their origins. After the engagement, Helena underwent a profound transformation. His ambition now has a new purpose: to create a space for healing and expression at Fazenda Oliveira. With Joachim by her side, Helena took on a new mission, focused on well-being and strengthening human and cultural connections. Helena and Joachim's wedding took place at Fazenda Oliveira, celebrating love and the renewal of life. The ceremony, surrounded by friends and family, symbolized their commitment to the future, uniting tradition and modernity in a setting that reflected the farm's natural beauty and cultural heritage. In Joachim's last days, he was surrounded by the affection of Helena and the community. His failing health did not diminish his passion for life. Joaquim spent his days reflecting on his journey, leaving behind a deep sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing he had left a significant legacy. Joaquim's legacy was manifested in the transformation of Fazenda Oliveira into a vibrant center of art and well-being. His vision and dedication inspired future generations to continue his work. The impact of his life and choices was felt by everyone, promising a promising future for the community and the farm.